Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Kris Ashley, where we explore the intersection between personal development, spirituality, and science. And I think we're going to hit on all three of those today. I'm really excited for my conversation. I have a body whisperer here today with me, and I didn't know what that was before I met Amanda. So I'm just so excited for this conversation and for her to share a story with all of us. So a couple quick announcements before we get started. Head over to and check out the links in the show notes. You'll see links to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. You'll see links to free giveaways, free downloads, free masterclass that I'm giving, as well as my courses and coaching. And as always, this podcast is part of a podcast network owned by the Los Angeles Tribune, and we focus a lot on personal development, lots of cool stuff going on, so be sure to follow us there. All right, so with me today, I have Amanda Smith. And Amanda combines her gifts of analysis and quantum physics from her experience solving aerospace engineering problems for NASA, paired with her savant intuitive abilities and healing gifts to serve as a body whisperer. She can track things that are happening in the body's energy system and directly affect the flows and systems to create balance, accelerate healing, and result in what sometimes seems like miracles. Perhaps more than anything, she can provide answers that are otherwise hidden, allowing creative problem solving and giving people hope. I love that. Welcome, Amanda. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kris. I am excited to dive into all three of those topics that your podcast is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying, like, you're such a perfect fit. And the fact that you have an aerospace engineering background in NASA just blew my mind when you came on at first and just like casually dropped that in the conversation. So I love to start off all my episodes the same way, and that is by asking people what their origin story is. So I'd love to hear your story from NASA to figuring out you have these abilities to walking down the path that you're on now.
Absolutely. Well, so went to college, played softball at a Division I school, and attempted to get my mechanical engineering degree there. It didn't go well, so I switched over to a Division II school, played softball there, and got mechanical and aerospace engineering degrees. Right after college, had the opportunity to go work for Lockheed Martin. It was on NASA's Orion program at the time. Now it's the Artemis program. And I was there for 8.5 years. And then after that program, I went on to working on small satellites and large satellites. And I realized that I wasn't a big fan of satellites because it really didn't have anything to do with humans in the way that I liked to play in the body. And so I exited aerospace and I started my online career. And I started off teaching people how to garden. And I also taught yoga, and I taught softball lessons to pitchers and catchers for softball. And now I'm a body whisperer, which is a phenomenally cool thing, especially when you're coming from such a science background and really having to get comfortable with the fact that it's kind of woo, but mostly science.
And you also have an aerospace business of your own, right?
I do. Yes. So the aerospace business is working on radiation protection. And that particular product, it's something NASA really, really needs so that we can send astronauts safely outside of Earth's orbit. So that's, just a side job.
That's amazing. And it's so inspiring. And I'm sure listeners are already inspired that you're doing all of these amazing things to help move us forward in space travel and exploration, but you're also following all these different passions you have. Oh, yeah. Kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the body whisperer part, can you explain what exactly a body whisperer is and how you even realize that you have that talent?
Ooh, I'm going to start with the second question first, because I didn't call it body whispering until one of my business coaches was like, "Oh, you're a body whisperer," and I was like, "Ooh, I like that. We're going to use that." But I've had this. It was a burden when I was younger, but ability to feel other people's pain. And it was specifically pain as a child. And I didn't know what to do with it until
All
about
right, can I
20.
just interrupt? Do you mean physical pain or emotional pain?
Yes, all
All
of
of it.
the above. Yes. Spiritual pain, also ancestral pain that they didn't know they were carrying around. It all the sheaths. So if you think of the
Large
sheaths
part of the
being
population.
yes, which is why I had to niche down in my business. Uh, but if you think about the four sheaths, we've got the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. All four of those sheaths I could feel. And it was very intense for me. And what I ended up starting to do was just feel like I was in pain all the time. And I finally had a random coach approach me and say, "Hey, are you recognizing that you're in pain?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And the next thing that he asked me was, "Do you know that it's not yours? For the most part, the pain that you're experiencing is not yours." And I was like, "Well, kind of. I know that I can tap into other people's stuff and feel it. And at the time I wasn't doing it with consent. And I've since learned don't do that and how to dial it in so that I can specify, okay, this is this person's or this is this person's. Whereas we were at a conference when I met him, Cable Jones is his name, and there was 500 people at the conference. Plus, we were in a hotel with, I'm sure, probably about 1,000 people staying in the hotel because we're in New York City, in Manhattan, and he was like, "Okay, let me teach you a couple of things so that you can really figure out what's your pain and what's other people's pain." And from there, it was like it opened the door in my mind to, oh, wow, I can really start to control what's going on in my body. And it was night and day difference for me as far as walking around and not literally feeling pain in every inch of my body.
Wow. So, how old were you when you met Cable Jones, and how was he able to identify you as someone who's feeling other people's pain?
So the conference that we were at was called Forefront by Ramit Sethi, and um, they opened up a Facebook group or a forum for us to talk and connect with other people who were going to the conference. And Cable noticed a pattern of me helping people prepare for the conference from a physical embodiment perspective. And this is where I was already playing in this realm of helping people with their body stuff. And so 2017, I would have been 30 something.
Okay, so you were an adult. You weren't a
Yes.
child still. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. 30 something. We'll hang in that. And realizing that I'm helping people and it's embodied help made him realize, oh, I need to reach out to her and see what she's doing. And actually, the first conversation that I had with him was around how we can emotionally affect water. And there's been studies out that show you can have a conversation with a glass of water or a conversation with a plant, and you can actually physically watch it deteriorate in front of you. And you can do scientific tests on it to see what's happening to the molecules to change it. And I was like, okay, he's my people. I can have this kind of conversation with him. And from there, he started to educate me around helping people in this arena. And I don't think he fully understood what I could do relative to what he was doing. We both had similar ways of connecting with people, but we definitely had some differences. Like he talked about, and this is a somatic training thing, creating protection, shielding around you so that you can isolate your stuff from everybody else's. And that's a very masculine way of putting it. And for me, I finally found a feminine teacher who could teach me about having a bubble instead of a bunch of shields, because shields are heavy. And a
Totally.
bubble, I look like Glinda the Good Witch from Wizard of Oz. And I like that way better.
So, wow, what a blessing that you met this man and he was able to help guide you. So, am I understanding that you didn't look to turn this ability on and off by yourself until you were in your 30s?
Correct.
Wow. So that's
Yeah,
that's a long time to live with feeling other people's pain and not differentiating it from your own and not being able to control it.
yes. I was in a world of hurt.
Yeah, wow. But you realized that it was from other people, right? Or did you
Yes,
just kind of
after that. And
after that? Okay.
well, I take that back. Before that, I could realize it was from certain people, but it would be that verbal recognition. They would tell me, "Oh yeah, I've got this knee pain and it's happening because I tweaked it walking down the stairs." And then I would immediately drop into their body and feel it and go, "Oh yeah, I can definitely feel that and it's right here and it feels like this and here's a couple of things that you could do to make it better."
So do they have to explain the pain to you before you can feel it, or do you just pick up on it sometimes too?
Now I can just pick up on it with
Okay.
consent, of course. So now it's if the person is willing to allow me to feel into their body, then I will dive in and go rooting around and find out what's going on.
My gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've said to my husband, I wish that doctors could like put themselves in patients' bodies for just like a minute, not because I want them to feel pain, but because so often doctors think you're crazy or it's all in your head or it's so hard for people to explain it or to just have it come across the right way. And if someone could just feel it, it'd be
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I get it." And I know what that is if they knew anatomy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty
And
amazing.
there's more than just anatomy that you need to know, especially if you want to dive into the healing aspects of it. Understanding mentally what's going on, understanding ancestrally. And this is where doctors will take a family history, right? But to understand if there's even more to that ancestral stuff that's going on, not just hereditary or from a DNA level, there's more. There's epigenetics, which we're just starting to see how that plays out in the body as well.
So when you are feeling someone's pain, can you differentiate between something physical that they have going on, like they just hurt their knee playing softball or something, versus an ancestral pain that they're carrying?
Usually they're intertwined, but yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. There's
Well,
usually again, it goes back to those four sheaths that I was talking about, where we've got the spiritual, the mental, emotional, and physical. They're usually tied together. They usually have a combination of things. If we have something physical show up in our body, the mental side of it was either something was mentally going on or emotionally going on to have it show up. And again, that goes back to somatics. How does our nervous system send us pain? Where does pain actually come from? Our brain. Or was there something already functioning improperly that created the mental struggle after that? So it's that chicken and egg, which one came first? But they're always tied together.
oftentimes pain is just messages from our body, right? That something's out of alignment, that we're not on the right path, that that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So I can totally see that. And I've also heard that all pain kind of starts more in your energetic field before it ever comes into your body. What do you think about
Yes,
that? Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
totally, completely agree with that. It's it's something that's stirring, right? And it wants you to pay attention to it. And ultimately, it's the brain sending the signal to that part of the body. Show them that it hurts here so that they pay attention to it. And now when they pay attention to it, they can do the work necessary to fix it. But what's the work? Well, when we go to doctors, like you were saying, when we go to doctors, they're working from the world of averages and speed, right?
Mhm.
Most doctors are overwhelmed with too many patients. They have a very short period of time to figure out what's going on, and they only have a subset of information. If they could do what I do, they would know right away, oh, okay, so that knee pain is actually coming from this side of the knee. It's not necessarily where they're feeling the pain. It might be another spot that's sending the signal. It's a referral pain instead. We all know referral pain is like you push on a spot that's hurting and all of a sudden you can feel it somewhere else in your body. Magic. But that's what the doctors would be able to feel and understand faster if they had this gift. And I've had people call me the walking MRI or the X-ray machine, and I was like, actually, I'm like all the things that monitor the body at the same time.
Yeah. And, when you were talking about referral pain and all of that, it made me think about what you said earlier that you just glazed over, but it is such an important point that pain starts in your brain and in your nervous system, right? Like
Right.
whether you have a broken arm or a backache or a migraine, like all pain starts in the same place, right? It comes from the same place. And understanding that, like, that's just when I learned that, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, just because my arm's broken doesn't mean like the pain I'm feeling in my arm doesn't come from my arm. That's crazy. Like,
Right.
that's so wild.
Yeah.
So, just because your knee is hurting on one side doesn't mean like that's where the injury is necessarily.
Exactly.
Pretty crazy.
That's where understanding more beyond just the physical anatomy, physiology, but also movement patterns, understanding the nervous system, understanding what emotional things sent the pain there. That's the somatics part of it. Understanding, is this something that is relative to an experience you're having or you had in the past or you're afraid of in the future? And
So,
identifying that quickly.
yeah. So you can feel people's pain and you can kind of tell the difference between, if it's emotional or ancestral or physical, even though they're all intertwined. But can you also differentiate between all those things you were just talking about? Like, and it made me think of it when you said someone called you a walking X-ray or MRI machine. Like, are you just feeling the pain or are you also sensing so much more about it?
I'm sensing a whole lot more about it. I'm receiving a whole lot more data from that specific spot or several spots in the body, because usually if we have one pain, we probably have more pains, but one pain is overriding the rest of them.
Mm.
And being able to identify, oh, okay, so right now you have a shoulder pain and a low back pain and a knee pain. And oh, let's look at how you walk. Let's just start there. And then how can we trigger the pain to go away? And if we can trigger it to go away from a brain-based perspective, then what else was going on to facilitate that problem? And that's where a conversation and coaching comes in.
Got it. So you're also helping heal people to the extent that you're offering suggestions, right? And I think you told me that you even offer dietary and movement suggestions too, right?
Correct. So yoga, as a yoga instructor, I love to offer up those kinds of movement-based things, or sometimes just stillness, right? Movement helps move energy through the body. Stillness allows the brain to process the mental side of things, right? So depending on what the issue is, we'll do either stillness or movement. And then dietary recommendations generally come from what's going on hormonally or what's going on in the guts. The guts, I love that lovely word, that digestive system connection. And there's a huge connection with the digestive system and the brain too. Our guts are our second brain. So helping people understand that and understand a lot that's going on down there in the guts is going to affect how the rest of your body feels and how the rest of your body functions.
Totally. And most of your immune system lives in your gut too,
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that biome in there.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. It can regulate everything from our immune system to our moods to just everything. Yeah. So
Mhm.
important. And especially with today's modern diets, a lot of people's guts need some love.
Yes, yes, and I think what we forget nowadays is we're trying the paleo diet and we're trying keto and all of these different opportunities to try different diet styles. And really, what we just need to do is do some interpretation of what works for us. And I like to teach people that I work with kinesiology, and I do it with snapping. So I program my hand to tell me yes and no. And for me, yes is my fingers stick together and no is slip. And then I teach them how to use that to go, okay, should I eat a banana right now? And they can test and find out. Or does my body like red meat? And ta-da, now they're getting the answers. And it's coming from an intuitive place, but they're getting a physical recognition with that kinesiology, snapping or locking your fingers together or sticking your arm out and letting it go up and down.
So it's really similar to muscle testing in that kind of way, right?
It is muscle testing.
Yeah, yeah, super cool. I've never heard of the snapping thing, but I love it. Yeah, muscle testing blows my mind.
When you're a mom
What's that?
and you don't have enough hands
Yeah.
to manage the child, the groceries, and you need an answer really quick, yeah, snapping's the key.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep, you can just put the bag over the arm and then you have the free hand.
Exactly.
So I love backing everything up with science, and you have a science background, so I'm sure you do too. How does neuroscience and neurology play into all of this body whispering that you do?
Ooh, oof. Understanding what part of the brain controls what thing that's coming up in the body. That's huge because again, the brain rules everything. Consciously or unconsciously, it's ruling the roost, right? It's sending the pain signals. It's telling your body to show you, hey, something's wrong here, right? So understanding the nervous systems, understanding how those interplay, understanding the patterns in the body as well. My gateway into all of this was actually Louise Hay. You Can Heal Your Body. That book, man, going through that book and going, okay, so this is the problem that's showing up and this is the mental thing that created it. And then going, okay, chicken or egg, which one came first? Was it the mental or the physical? And again, for some people it's physical, for some people it's mental. So understanding that and going, all right, so we're recognizing this pattern. We're seeing what's happening from the brain perspective and the nervous system perspective. How can we help them heal? And this goes back, and I've said it several times, somatics, that new cool word is really what Louise Hay was doing, but from the opposite side of the spectrum. She was seeing this pain pattern in the body and going, oh, this is what's going on mentally. Whereas somatics is going, okay, let's go find that pain and let's trace it through the body and see where it moves. So
Yeah, I love that book so much. That one and Soul Speak by Julia Cannon. Like anytime I have anything going on, I look it up, and they're like little dictionaries for me. I'm like, ooh, let's. And for those of you who don't know it, you can actually go through different body parts or different pain that you're feeling, and there's a spiritual little write up about like what causes that spiritually, right? Did I just describe that correctly?
yes, Louise Hay gives you affirmations, which it's funny.
Oh,
I
yeah.
never really dove into the affirmation side of things. That's kind of like neuro linguistic programming, NLP.
Mhm.
And hypnosis to an extent has that same type of thing, and I was never one that could be hypnotized. NLP works on me, but the hypnotism never worked on me, unfortunately, and I know that's one of your favorite things.
It is. It is, and that just makes me curious.
Right?
And
Why didn't it work?
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, who knows, right? That could also go back to like a past life or an ancestral thing, right? There's some kind of block there, some kind of safety mechanism that you've
Safety
built
block.
in.
Yep, it's a
Yeah.
safety block, and I know it. As soon as I mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that's a safety thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting how our bodies work, even on like a deep subconscious level, to
Yes.
protect us, right?
Correct. Exactly. And again, that's where some things will come up and you'll be like, well, I'm experiencing this pain, but I didn't do anything to deserve it. I don't know why I continue to have it. I don't understand why this is a chronic thing I'm dealing with. And it's like, well, it's in your subconscious, it's in your unconscious mind. Let's make it conscious so you can deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that's why working with a practitioner is so important, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it's hard for just an individual to get down into their subconscious and to see what's really going on, and then also to reprogram it, right?
Correct. Yes, all of us need coaches. I have coaches to help me with these things. In fact, yesterday I had a huge, huge breakthrough around money. And I was just like, oh, wow. And then realized after diving deeper into it, that was an ancestral thing. It
Mm.
comes through my lineage, it's an epigenetic thing. So
So
now it's conscious.
what was your big breakthrough? Or was it that it was just ancestral?
Wealthy people are bad.
That was
Yeah.
your
That
story.
was the that was the story. That was the
Yeah.
programming, the ancestral programming that I had. And
Yeah.
what's funny is, when I realized it, I started to cough. And that coughing is there's something around that I have to speak. And well, here I am speaking it, aren't I?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I talk about that in I have a free masterclass. I talk about it in my course. And I always or not always, lately, I've been giving that example of, do you remember when that submersible that was looking for the Titanic wreckage went down like a few months back? And
Yes.
it was like billionaires on there. And
Yes.
they had this horrible, like, few moments before death. Like, at first we thought they just imploded and they didn't know what was going on, but then later found out they heard the creaking, and then the thing like plummeted down to the floor, and like just super scary.
Mhm.
But all of these news outlets were posting about it on social media, and the comment sections were so horrific. It was people like, "Oh, great! Like, less billionaires in the world. Who cares?" Or like, "Eat the rich," or
Mm.
"Screw the wealthy." And it's like, do you think any of those people are manifesting money and wealth and abundance and financial freedom in their life?
No,
No,
absolutely not.
hell
Yeah.
no, because they
That's
have this
them screaming, "I
story.
have a problem with that."
Yeah, it's just like a story about money that people have, and everyone has a money story,
Yes.
for negative or positive. So, congratulations on your breakthrough.
Thank you. That's thanks to my coach and the work that she's doing to help me continue to level up. And like I said, we all need those kind of people in our lives that are just going to continue to make us better and better. That's why we get married, right?
Totally, and like, I would never want to work with a coach that didn't have a coach, right? Like, you want
Right.
to work with someone who's constantly growth minded and inspired and learning and growing themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you we've rattled off like all of these companies that you own, all of these things you do, and I'm so amazed, like I said, that you've got some serious scientific companies happening. You're a healer, you're helping people, you're also just following your passions when it comes to things like softball and gardening. You're also a death doula. We haven't even talked about that. So
Gosh, yes.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Okay, so death doula, you're present for people's death. You are really ushering them to the other side and hoping that you can do it in a caring, kind, compassionate way. Some people need a shove. So there is that. Um, but death doulaing, hmm, it's it's uh it's a touchy subject for people, right? Death general is a touchy subject, but none of us get out of this one alive. So why not address it? Why
Yeah.
not learn what you're going to experience and how it's going to look and how it's going to feel? And, you know, a lot of it's hypotheticals. It comes from quantum physics as well. So on the other side, in the realm of spirit, there is no time and there is no space. And as a human living in this dense meat suit, it's really hard to conceptualize that. Our brains do not want to go there. They don't want to think time doesn't exist because that's all we've experienced. We're living a linear path. And space doesn't exist. Well, I have a body and I'm in a room in a house on planet Earth. Like, how am I supposed to imagine that I could be everywhere all at once? And that's the other side, right? That's the spirit side of the world. And so helping people navigate that is interesting. We don't usually when someone's in a dying process drop that on them. That's a little too heady for them. since they're trying to exit. But knowing that from my perspective, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to witness it, to be able to watch a person pass and then witness them move out of their body potentially and look around and go, I can go everywhere all at once and watch them disperse.
Yeah, I have like such a personal story about that. You said death is so uncomfortable for so many people, and I've gone down so many death rabbit holes. I'm so fascinated by it, and I love reading stories and watching videos about NDEs. But I had a shared death experience when my dog passed, and I lost my dog and my dad in the last year and a half, and I was there, right there, like being their death doula, right? And it was, like you said, it was a really beautiful experience. Kind of an honor also, right, to be there.
Absolutely.
But when you're talking about like them dispersing, I know exactly what you mean. So when my dog passed away, we had her euthanized in our home, and
Yay.
we walked out to, what was that?
Good job. That's the
Yeah. Oh
best way
gosh.
for
In
them.
her favorite place, I would never do anything else for her. I always say she's the ET to my Elliot. Like, we're just connected.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I've done like past life regression hypnosis where she was like my child in other lives. Like, we're just connected. But so after she passed, we walked, the woman had like a little basket. She was only like 12 pounds. And we walked her out to the woman's car and like thanked her and like said a final goodbye, and then like walked back into our house, we being my husband and I. And it was wild. Like, the moment I opened the door, it was like I was hit with this like wall, and it was her. Like, it was her presence. Like, someone's presence, right? And I just felt so much joy and lightness and peace, and I started like laughing and smiling. But it was like she had just expanded, and it was like every molecule of air was her. And I don't know how else to explain it but that. It was like the wildest thing. It was like she took up the whole room, and it was just like I have goosebumps just like talking about it, because it was like the most incredible experience I've ever had.
yeah.
But I understand that, like what you're saying, where they disperse, because it's like I don't know how else to say it. She was every molecule in the room, and just everything. It was just her. And it was funny because I kept talking about it. I was like, oh my God, I feel her. She's here. Like, this is amazing. And my husband's like, yeah, she'll always be with us. Like, he didn't really get it. And then after like 20 minutes, I was like, oh my God, it's fading. And he was like, oh my God, I feel it. Like, she started with me, and then she went to him, and it was so cool. And then he had the same experience, and it was just wild. And I have goosebumps talking about it. But
I do too.
yeah, no,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
so real.
Right? I mean, it's a magical transition, right?
It
Going from
is.
the physical to the spirit, going into this space of I'm no longer controlled by this density of the body that I was in.
Yeah.
Poof. See ya.
Yeah. It's like escaping that heaviness almost, right?
Yes.
Um, so how do you even be a death doula? Do people hire you for that? Like, does a hospice service hire you? Like, how do you find these people that want a death doula?
I know people who have they've gone down that rabbit hole. I haven't dove deep down this one. But they'll become clergy. They'll get their degree in all the religions essentially, and then become present at a facility where people are passing, so a nursing home or a hospital, and they'll help support in that way. Um, so that's one way to do it. Hiring a death doula. Not a lot of people know about that one. Not a lot of people know about birth doulas either, where you're ushering in a human.
I've got one of those come in.
Good. Yay. Oh, I had two. I had one for my birth and one after, and it was the best investment by far for me
Oh,
and the child.
so I have one for after. I don't have one for during, actually. You liked
Ooh.
having one for during?
Yes. So she was my advocate.
Yeah.
She knew things that I didn't know, and this goes the same for death doulas. They know more than what the people who are surrounding the person who's dying, that are family members or really close friends. They they aren't part of that world. So they don't have the knowledge base that someone who's immersed themselves in it has,
Yeah.
birth or death. And ultimately, my doula was going to advocate if things went sideways and it weren't on my birth plan, she was going to be able to help me make the best decisions for what I wanted and what was best for the baby and me physically. She did back pressure for me. So when the labor pains really started to hit my low back, she was fists deep in my back, which was so nice. And she was also advocating for, okay, hubby, please give her some water. Hubby, please give her some food. And I was at a birth center, so I could have those things. She also let me know, hey, you probably need to get up and rock your hips a little bit so that we can get things moving a little bit more. And she was also my photographer. She was dual purpose when it came to that. So I got some great pictures that I can look on for years and years. And I do that on the anniversary of my daughter's birth every year, her birthday.
Well, I think you just like talked me into getting a birth doula. Just
So
even
worth it.
like the knuckles in the back. I'm like, oh, I'm having back pain right now. And month 8, I'm like, I want that right now.
Right?
So,
Yes. That's where hubby
um,
comes in. You got to teach him how to hit the right spots.
yeah, yeah, that's
Death doulaing is pretty much the same thing. You're ushering someone out instead of in, and having someone with that knowledge base of here's what to expect, and really helping the living understand what's going on for the dying.
yeah,
Right? It's not like the dying wants to sit there and tell you, yeah, I feel like crap. Or, yeah, I really just want to be in a cave right now. I really don't want to hear any sounds, or I really want to hear a sound, or I really want to have a smell, or I keep smelling this certain smell. The dying generally want to hunker down and not connect in the human way anymore as
yeah,
they're passing. And that's the thing about death doulaing is you're letting the humans know, hey, here's what's happening. They really are letting go of all their senses. And with my gift, being able to dive into their body and feel what's going on, I can even tell the people who are experiencing what's going on for the person dying, hey, he's shut down his hearing, or he's shut down his sight, or he doesn't want touch anymore. Right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it's
totally.
interesting to know that too, like watching the senses turn off, and that's the brain shutting down from a science perspective.
Totally. And like I said, I lost my dad in February. We're recording this in December, so it hasn't been a year yet. Um
So
and
sorry.
thank you. I'm such a researcher, so like what was bringing me peace was just reading. I was sitting at his bedside and just like while he was sleeping, I would just read and research and like signs of this level of like the dying process, like everything. I read some amazing books again on like shared death experiences and NDEs, but I also read like all the scientific articles or like what to look for. So it was like, and I was watching him so closely. It was like I knew it was like the modeling of the skin and like the ashiness on the knees and like just like little things. And I
Mhm.
remember his final moments, like we knew he was gonna, because like apnea is one of the things, right? Like once apnea kicks in, like you're like, okay, it's close.
Right.
And we had this hospice nurse had just like come by. They come for like half an hour at a time, like twice a week kind of thing. They're not there often.
Yep.
And she was there and she was like changing his diaper, right? Because he needed a diaper at the end. And she rolled him back over in the bed and she was like, I think he's gone. And he was super stiff, super skeletal looking. And we were all kind of like, whoa, like it just happened so fast. And all of a sudden he was like, oh, and like took one of those breaths. And we are like, okay, this is it. And I was like, okay, you two nurses need to go. My mom and I just need to be in the room with him. And this whole time, my parents have that sleep number bed that like
Mhm.
raises the back.
Yep.
So the back was kind of raised and like he kept sliding down. So my mom, every time the nurses were there, would be like, you need to help him like get up, right? Because she's like handicapped. She couldn't do it with me. It kind of required 2 people to lift the sheet.
Mhm.
And this is happening, right? And I'm like, okay, nurses have to go. My mom's like, no, you have to lift him up. You have to was like frantic. And we're like, everyone's like, do you understand what's happening? Like, he has like seconds, right? And she was just like hysterical about it. So like me and the nurse like quickly lifted him.
Okay.
They ran out of the room. I sat there and held his hand and was talking to him saying like, I love you. And my mom's like wandering around the room, like looking for a water bottle. Like she just had no idea what was happening.
Yeah.
Like she was so disconnected from it.
Yep.
And then
She
I was like, Mom, get
disassociated.
over here and sit down. And she did and whispered, I love you. And then he died. And it was just like the craziest, like
Magic.
30 seconds. But then like, yeah, but then it was just like this really peaceful moment. But it just made, I'm telling that story because you made me think of like, you know, the family members sometimes can't comprehend what's going on, or they don't have the information, they haven't done the research, or it's just too overwhelming. So they're going towards like the familiar tasks, like they're trying to like check off tasks rather than just be present, right?
Yes. Yes. Disassociating happens a lot when it comes, especially when you see it from the couple's perspective, right? I see that often. It's the other person doesn't even want to imagine what it'll be like on the other side of this for them in this life. And that, I mean, I'm getting tore up from that one. That's the toughest thing to see.
Yeah.
Because you know, this is a moment that we really want you to be present, but they can't.
Yeah.
It's too overwhelming. It's too much because you know it's over. And helping them navigate that, not only in the moment, but after the moment and months and years after that, that's the magic of this kind of work.
Yeah.
That's the magic of really, really holding space for that person to process and letting it take months, years, decades, hopefully not centuries, lifetimes sometimes too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think a lot of people like when they have a partner who passes and they've been sick for a long time and they've been in the caretaker role, that's become their whole world, caretaking, right? And
Yes.
it's hard, I imagine, to suddenly have that just end, like just suddenly end. And it's like, well, what do I do with myself now? Like
Yep.
that became like my purpose, right?
It's like retirement.
Yeah.
Right? Same,
Yeah.
same. All of a sudden, I don't have a job anymore. What am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
And you figure it out eventually,
Yeah.
but hopefully you're
Totally.
getting help to navigate that. And people who are, and I can't stress this one enough, people who are retiring need that same kind of guidance. Otherwise, and this is where we see people who retire and then just die a couple of months later because they don't feel like they have a purpose anymore. Or we see when someone who's been caretaker for their partner for a long period of time will pass not long after that person passed. Same. They were like, I don't have a purpose anymore. Time to go.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe we choose. We choose when we go. In the moment, we choose.
Totally. I believe that too. Yeah. I mean, I have friends whose parent passed away and they're like, there was always someone in the room with them. The 5 minutes that no one was there was when they left. It was like they didn't want to be around anyone, or like, I swear my dad died when the hospice nurses were there because it made it easier on my mom and I, because they just were like, okay, let's take care of the phone calls, the paperwork, like. So as a death doula, you know, what else have you noticed or witnessed or sensed watching all these people cross over?
There's a moment when they cross that they'll either go straight to dispersal or they'll want to move through someone. They'll want to move, and it's usually the heart spaces where I see it or feel it the most, is they'll want to have that one last moment of touching this humanity, and then they're out because their body has expired. And to move through someone else gives them that last touch point, and it leaves behind a little of them as well. There's that push of that feeling And if you're present enough during when someone is passing, you'll feel it. You'll know exactly when it happens. When my grandpa passed, he I was helping facilitate that, and he moved through my mom and my grandma at the same time. And it was this quick whoosh through their heart centers. And I've never asked if they felt it. And I was in the other room when it happened. I was making scrambled eggs when it happened, doing those tasks. We know it's coming. We're minutes away. But I'm making eggs. That was my moment to remove myself from the room. And I felt it necessary for me to remove myself from the room because I could feel him pushing me away. Like, I can't have you here right now. And
Yeah.
that moment I was just like, okay. And then coming into the room and my mom announcing he's not breathing anymore. And that whoosh happened right after that. And I stood there and I watched for a second and I was like, no, I think his chest is still moving. And that was his energy rippling off of his body. That's what I was seeing. And it for me, being able to see those kinds of things when a body has just expired is that's the stuff that you can't put science to.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And once you start down this rabbit hole, it just becomes so clear that like death isn't an it's just another door.
Yep.
Right? You're like going back home to your true self, and like these bodies, like just looking at a body right after like life left it, like spirit left it, is so trippy. It's just this empty vessel. But it's
Mhm.
like it was just this avatar that they were using. Like that's not who they really are. That's not their true form. It's just so wild. It's
Right?
so wild that like our soul just leaves our body and goes back to this other realm.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree. And there's a process that we have to go through, I feel. There's a process that the body really the spirit needs to go through after it's been embodied for so long. Living in this dense meat suit, all of a sudden you don't have this anymore and you're like, "Okay, what do I do with this freedom? What do I do with this lightness? What do I do with this light?" Because you're in a different form. And there's a time to process. There's things that you need to go through after death in order to move into the light, into that spiritual realm where some people will follow their religious path that they understood that becomes their path on that side. Some people who didn't have a religious path become spirit. They become one with everything. I often wonder, and this one's my aerospace side going, oh, wouldn't this be amazing? If I'm spirit and I can be everywhere at any time, does that mean I can go off planet anywhere I want?
There's
Ooh.
so many NDE experiences that all say a similar thing, and a lot of them include space. A lot of them include space. So I think you'll be happy to find that you're out there. And it's interesting that you said like sometimes they need time. Like Dolores Cannon is one of my like
Oh,
favorite.
yes.
Yeah, but I don't know if you've read her book Between Death and Life.
Yes.
And yeah,
Mm,
so good.
so good.
It's so good, but she talks about like one of the places some souls need to go to is the resting place,
Mhm.
right? Because after, if they've had a difficult death, or if they've had a difficult life, or they're just having trouble with the transition, they need to go to this place where they get to just like rest and just kind of get their energy back before they can like really move on. I don't know. It makes sense. Totally makes sense.
My coach, we're actually going through this process right now from a conscious perspective. And what she's teaching us, and I'm literally right in the middle of it, learning this, but she's like, there's 10 steps to dying. And the first one is shadow dancing. So the shadow work that some people do here in this life, that's the first part of death, right? We haven't quite died yet, but we're in the process. And that's part of that death doula position. And then the next phase after that is we've got to harvest what we did. in this life, right? And that's where NDEs will have the visions, right? They'll see their life pass before their eyes, right? And then we have to recognize what our wins were and then dive into gratitude. And then from gratitude, start to vision what this new world is going to be like. So that's as far as I've gotten so far. The next 5 steps I get to learn tonight.
You'll have to let me know what they are. That's
Heck
super
yes.
powerful. And it's interesting that shadow work was the first one. And the other thing that I've heard a lot from NDE people is that when they're doing the life review, they're also experiencing it from other people's point of view, right? So like if you're, and it's kind of intimidating, right? Like if you're looking back over this one particular incident, you're going to experience it from everyone else's point of view that was involved and feel the emotions of the way that you made them feel during those, which is like,
that makes sense.
And never for like judgment, just for like learning, right? Just to
data.
level up and grow. Yeah, data.
That's how I live my life. It's neither good nor bad. It's data.
Yeah, I love it. You know what another great book is, you've probably read, is The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Have you read that?
Oh, no. Write that down.
Oh my gosh. It is the most beautiful book I've ever read, I think. So it's about this woman who's like not spiritual or anything, but her kind of bad boy brother passes away, and he starts communicating with her from the other side. And as he's like going through all of these stages of like literally what you were just talking about, like the afterlife, he's vividly explaining it to her, and it's like stunningly beautiful. And she comes at it from such a like cynic point of view that it's like, she's not just trying to like sell you on something, like on some fantasy, like it's beautiful. It's amazing.
I'm checking it out.
It's it's really, really cool. Yeah. I think it's on audio too. I think I listened to it. Wow. I can't believe an hour has gone by. I forgot, I think, that we were recording a podcast, and I thought we were just chatting because I love talking about all of this.
Yay.
It's so fascinating. But we are at the hour mark. So, tell people how they can find you, how they can work with you. I know you've niched down your business, so tell us a little bit about that too.
Absolutely. So bodywhisperhealing.com is my website. For the listeners on the show, if you've made it to this point, if you've made it to the hour end, bodywhisperhealing.com/thank-you-listener. That is an opportunity to do a 10-minute body scan, what we talked about at the very beginning of the show, with me, and I will dive in and see what's going on. Niching down, I specifically on my website, you'll see I work with female college athletes who have gut issues. And the way I think about this is, a female college athlete is under 25. Their prefrontal cortex hasn't finished growing yet. It's still in the end process of becoming the chooser. And if I can work with those people who are having gut issues, guts directly connected to the brain, I can probably work with you too.
I love it. And if you're a female college athlete listening, she means that with all love, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I was that female college athlete who had come to find out, lots of gut issues, but those gut issues were part mine, part other people's. And a lot of what was going on for me was just this unraveling of what path I should have been on versus what path I was on. So that's usually what's happening for a female college athlete, is they're realizing, oh, well, maybe I should make some different decisions about my career or the sport I'm playing or how I'm treating my body right now in college, because nobody eats well in college.
Definitely not. Awesome. So all those links will be in the show notes as well. So if you're driving and listening to this, or you're in a place where you can't write it down, you can always come back and check. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on. I loved our conversation. I love talking to you. We hit so many different topics today, but I think that's kind of your MO. And for everyone listening, please like, share, subscribe, help spread this episode, help spread the podcast. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. I'll see you all